That was a price list of Gibson guitars from 1959. I definitely want one of these for real so that I can go back in time and maybe pick up 50 Les Pauls. But jokes aside, every now and then when we come across things like this and we guitarists wonder, are guitars getting more expensive or cheaper? And that's what we're going to deep dive into in today's episode 6 of G3 Podcast. Stay tuned. Are guitars getting more expensive or cheaper? We're going to be as conclusive as possible in today's video. So there's many factors that we need to consider before we jump to conclusions, and we're going to discuss that in the first part of the video and then we'll go to the conclusions. We have a lot of interesting guitar related podcasts coming up, so please support the channel by hitting that subscribe button and like button. It really helps us, and also shoot some good ideas that we can discuss in the future episodes. With that aside, number one, expensive is a very subjective thing. I know a lot of guys would say it's all inflation adjusted. Inflation and practical affordability are two different animals. So we need to consider that in all the discussions that we have. There are multiple factors which determine whether the guitars have become more expensive or cheaper. And I'm going to list it in the order of priority according to me. Number one is the labor cost, the country of production and labor cost. That plays a very big factor. Number two is the level of automation and mechanization for that matter. Because in the olden times, when we talk about the vintage guitars, they were made by hand. Today we have CNC routers. The cost of marketing. In the olden days, guitars were short in supply, so there was very little marketing cost. Today we have NAMM shows and social media and various other things which come into play. And last, and according to me the least important, would be the inflation. Now let's discuss all these points one by one. Country of production and labor. There are some snippets which I'm going to put below the screen. These are actual interviews of manufacturers. Labor accounts to around 80 to 90% of the guitar costs, historically and even now. And if you look at a cost of manufacturing a T-style, a Telecaster style guitar, between China and US, the labor costs are tenfold. So that plays a huge factor in the overall pricing of a guitar. And similarly, if you look at the automation which comes into play, even now, custom built instruments by star luthiers who build the guitars by hand is definitely more expensive. Whereas if we go to a factory, irrespective of country they are located in, there are CNC routers and high level of automation. All the parts, even the pickups, the tuners, there are automations available today, which makes it different from the way they were manufactured historically. Marketing costs. Today there are artist acknowledgement or distribution costs, manufacturer advertising, social media advertising, trade shows, which never existed. And of course, inflation, right? There is a certain level of inflation, but you can't just point fingers at inflation alone, because inflation is an average. It's a basket of commodities, and the way the prices are moved over a period of time, it's averaged out. But the materials which go into building a guitar are natural materials mostly. You're talking about magnets for the pickups, you're talking about wood, you're talking about steel, you're talking about now stainless steel and various other things which go into a guitar, where the prices of these commodities are moved very differently from the overall inflation. It might be a US average or it might be a global average, irrespective of that. Now with these factors out of the way, let's try to be conclusive in our approach. There are two key conclusions that I could personally arrive at. Number one, in general, guitars have become extremely affordable. To prove my point, if you look at 1960, the most affordable guitar. And the reason I'm going to 1960 is, we see crazy prices going on for the 50s and the 60s instruments generally in the market, which makes us think, are guitars actually getting cheaper or expensive, right? In 1960, the most affordable electric solid body guitar or electric guitar in general was the Harmony H46, which was also known as Silvertone Stratotone or something of that sort, this guitar. So it costed $54.95 USD in 1960. So in today's terms, the same guitar should be around $450, $442 to be more precise. Today, if you actually look at instruments you can buy for $440 US dollars, that is, are much, much more efficient and super well built. In fact, I'll leave a link above on one of the caught Les Paul copy, which I reviewed in the channel and shot it against the Gibson Les Paul. You can see how good the build quality has become, and that's a $400 guitar. So in general, my conclusion is affordable guitars are much better and cheaper, and guitars in general have got more affordable over a period of time. Now here comes the second part. The statement which I made in part 1 is not fully applicable across the board, especially for the big brands. Let's see what is happening brand wise, or I'm talking about the branded expensive guitars. They have moved very, very differently, and for this analysis, I'm only taking the most popular guitar models, the big four, the Les Paul, the Strat, the Tele, and the 335. All of them have behaved very differently, but we can see a trend. This is how the Gibson Les Paul has behaved vis-a-vis the inflation factor. You can see that the Gibson Les Paul has actually got more expensive as compared to maybe a 1950 over a period of time. Whereas a Tele is actually cheaper now. That's the case with Strat also. Strats are relatively cheaper. Today, the $2,000 Strats are actually much, much cheaper relative to the quality and the playability and the build, the overall build quality and everything. Strats have actually got a little cheaper over a period of time. And if you look at the 335, same trend, it's more expensive. Now, if you put all those factors in, between Fender and Gibson, the labor costs are same because these are all US made guitars. Inflation is relatively same. So different brands have behaved differently over a period of time. I have purposely not included the acoustic guitars. Maybe a separate video for that, maybe in the next couple of weeks. So in conclusions, guitars in general have become more affordable. Playability of guitars and the quality of the build has actually improved relative to the cost, that is. Brand wise, different brands are pricing the guitars differently. Gibson is more expensive as compared to the 1950s, whereas Fender is not. Acoustic guitars, maybe we'll do one more round, and I'll try to gather in more data for some other brands just to see which direction the guitars are heading. But till then, I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much.